This time, we returned to Texas for a new trapping operation at Ethan's ranch. Recently, signs of wild boars have been appearing throughout the area in far greater numbers than usual. Clearly, the boars were coming back, but this time, they were no longer moving alone. They were traveling in large groups, more organized and far more cautious than before. Ethan contacted us when the situation began slipping out of control. And the question was simple: will we finally stay one step ahead this time, or would the boars outsmart us once again on our own ground? We deployed the entire trapping system across Ethan's ranch in a single day. Every location was carefully selected to operate continuously from daylight through the night. And, just as expected, the first trap was triggered that same afternoon. Without wasting time, we headed straight to the scene. Inside was a group of wild boars that had entered while searching for food during the day, a clear sign that they were beginning to let their guard down. But that was only the beginning. Just a few hours later, the second trap was triggered shortly before sunset. This time, there were even more boars inside, showing that the herd was still moving actively through the area. 2 daytime traps, just the beginning. Everything truly exploded once darkness fell. The third trap sent the first signal of the night. Through the camera feed, we watched a large group enter the enclosure, and within seconds the gate dropped, securing every animal inside. We had barely finished reviewing that capture when the fourth trap was triggered. This time, the number of boars inside genuinely surprised us. Clearly, the herd had no idea that the entire area had already been covered by a network of traps. And then, the fifth trap, the final trap of the night, was triggered as well, completing an unprecedented chain of activations. When we compiled the results, the number of wild boars captured was enormous, far beyond anything we had originally expected. The final trap of the night had closed, bringing an end to a continuous series of activations unlike anything we had seen before. As we reviewed all the signals, one thing became clear. The entire trapping system had worked exactly as planned. But the real work would not begin until daylight. Morning light allowed us to approach each location more safely and with a clearer view. Our first stop was the nearest trap. Even from a distance, the constant movement inside told us the result was significant. As we approached, the trapped herd was still in a state of panic after spending the entire night confined. Without hesitation, we quickly brought the situation under control and efficiently handled every boar inside the first trap. Immediately afterward, we moved on to the second location. Under the morning sun, the scene became even clearer. The number of boars inside was still impressive. After many hours in confinement, they moved more slowly, but remained highly alert. We worked together once again, handling the situation quickly and decisively, completing the second trap without losing valuable time. But we were not finished. The third trap was our final stop. As we approached, we realized it had been one of the most productive traps of the entire operation. The boars inside were exhausted after spending the whole night trapped, yet they continued searching for a way out. Once again, the entire process was carried out with speed and precision, bringing the final daytime operation to a close. By the time everything was finished, the sun was already high in the sky. Only then did we truly understand the scale of this operation. A trapping system working throughout the entire night, and a morning dedicated to bringing the whole mission to a decisive conclusion. This place had been ravaged by wild boars many times. Fields were torn apart, fences broken down, and the damage repeated season after season. Small traps only managed to catch a few animals, while the rest of the herd quickly learned to avoid them and became more cunning with time. We could no longer deal with the problem in scattered ways. Together with the farmers in the area, we agreed to build a large trap, strong enough to capture the entire herd at once. It was a collective decision by the whole community to put an end to the long chain of destruction. As evening approached, while the sunlight was still strong enough, we began building the trap. Heavy steel mesh panels were carried out and assembled into a tightly sealed circle. Each joint was tightened carefully and driven deep into the dry ground. The sound of hammers striking metal echoed sharply through the quiet air. From the outside, it looked like nothing more than a cold iron frame. But in reality, it was a giant lock waiting for the right moment to close. Once the trap enclosure was secured, we installed infrared cameras around the area, mounting them high on tree trunks to monitor the entire trail leading inside. Everything was done quickly and carefully. We minimized human traces and left early so that our scent could fade away in the wind. The final step was baiting the trap. Bags of corn were opened, their sweet scent drifting through the late afternoon air. We scattered the corn to create a faint trail leading gradually toward the center of the trap. The middle was where the bait was placed the heaviest. Step by step, the herd would be drawn deeper inside without realizing it. When everything was finished, the trap area fell silent again. Only the faint smell of corn lingered around, and somewhere in the forest, sensitive noses had already begun to catch the scent. When night fell, the forest seemed perfectly still, but none of us truly felt at ease. Then suddenly, movement appeared on the screen. The wild boars had arrived. The large lead so stepped forward first, sniffing the air as she followed the scent of corn. One by one, big and small, the rest of the herd slowly moved toward the trap. Wild boars possess powerful survival instincts and sharp awareness of their surroundings. But tonight, hunger and the sweet smell of corn outweighed any danger they might have sensed. Guided by the leader, the others followed behind. Without suspicion, without hesitation, they rushed in to enjoy the food. When we were certain the entire herd was inside the trap, suddenly, bang, the final watcher triggered the drop gate. The sharp crash of steel echoed across the forest. In that instant, the quiet woods exploded into chaos. The wild boars panicked, charging in every direction, slamming into the steel fencing, colliding with one another as they tried desperately to escape. The ground was torn apart beneath their powerful weights. The mesh walls shook violently. The strongest boars attempted to ram the fencing with brute force, but it was all useless against the sturdy, carefully designed steel enclosure. The elasticity of the mesh pushed the powerful animals back each time they lunged. Some of the smaller boars tried to climb or leap over the barrier, but the height of the fence stopped them every time. Panic spread through the herd as they realized they were completely trapped inside a steel prison. In that moment, no one in our group dared to breathe too loudly. Everyone understood. This was a confrontation between the wild survival instincts of the boars and a plan carefully designed by humans. Before dawn broke, we approached the trap. The boars were no longer thrashing wildly as they had during the night. Many were exhausted, breathing heavily. Some stood quietly, their legs heavy with fatigue. Yet their instincts still pushed them to run whenever they sensed movement. Seeing the herd of more than 20 boars captured at once, the farmers finally let out a sigh of relief. Before opening the trap, the team checked every lock and joint again to make sure the structure remained secure. They carefully observed the animals to ensure the herd would not erupt into panic again. Each boar was restrained, following proper safety procedures. Specialized tools were used to prevent injuries, both for the people involved and for nearby livestock. The wild boars were then loaded onto trucks for further handling. Part of the harvest would be shared among the community according to prior agreement. The rest would be processed according to local regulations, ensuring disease control and environmental safety. After everything was finished, the surrounding area was checked one final time. The forest was returned to the quiet state it had before. And when everything was over, everyone understood that the success of the night did not come from luck or individual strength. It came from choosing the right plan from the very beginning. A large net trap, placed in the right location and strong enough to hold an entire herd, prevented the need for countless scattered traps, the kind that only lead to repeated failure. No one forgot that deeper in the forest, there were still other wild boars. But the events of that night had proven something important. When people stand together and choose the right solution, they can protect their crops, reduce damage, and keep the community safe. That night, the wild boars came right up to the edge of the residential area. Fresh tracks overlapped old ones. The grass was torn apart. The shared pathway churned into chaos. One look was enough to know we couldn't wait until tomorrow. We had to act early, the moment the threat began pressing against the neighborhood. But we didn't charge straight into the most chaotic spot. Instead, the team chose to block the gateway right along the route the herd was bound to pass through if they intended to move in the neighborhood. It was still close intervention, still timely. The only difference was position. We acted where the risk could be controlled, reducing damage without pushing the entire neighborhood into greater danger. Rather than confronting them head-on, the trap was set at a natural exit point. A movement corridor the herd had no choice but to cross if they continued forward. This was not where they caused disruption, but where they moved in the most familiar and predictable way. The traditional corral trap was designed as an open control ring. Its structure allowed the boars to approach naturally, without sudden pressure, without disrupting the herd's existing order. That key element made the control process safer and more effective. The value of the trap did not lie in how many animals were contained, but in where the herd was brought under control. When the trap was triggered, the process unfolded quietly. No loud noises, no disturbance to the sleeping neighborhood. The herd was held within a space large enough to maintain order, yet separated enough to fully isolate the risk. Instead of spreading outward, the danger was contained at a clearly defined control point. At that moment, the trap was no longer merely a tool for holding animals. It became a strategic checkpoint where the safety of the community was protected through calculated control. Once the trap had done its job, an important decision was made: no on-site handling. Keeping wild boars too long near residential areas can create secondary risks: odor, noise, unnecessary curiosity, and crowds gathering. The trap remained intact, functioning as a stable protective unit throughout transport. The route was carefully selected, avoiding densely populated zones and any factor that might cause disturbance. This was the stage demanding the highest discipline. A single small mistake during transport could undo the entire chain of control established beforehand. Only after the herd had been moved away from the residential area did the real handling begin. At this point, the story was no longer about confrontation or prevention, but about responsibility in using a food resource safely and meaningfully. The wild boar meat was cleaned and carefully sorted, with any unsuitable portions removed. Every step adhered strictly to hygiene and food safety principles. Different cuts were prepared into nutritious meals. Lean portions were steamed or boiled to preserve their natural flavor. Energy-rich cuts were slow stewed to support heavy labor. The entire process followed a sustainable mindset. No waste, no harm, no additional risk to the community. This was not the end of a control operation. It was how people take responsibility for what they have chosen to do. The next morning, the neighborhood returned to its normal rhythm. No new tracks, no lingering unease. Few people knew that just hours earlier, a precise chain of decisions had prevented a threat from spiraling beyond control. And what matters most is that the story did not end when the trap was activated. It extended through every step, positioning correctly, containing risk in the right place, disciplined transport, safe handling, and responsible use. Preventing disaster is not about the most forceful action. It is about a chain of correct decisions, from the first trap to the final meal. I'd seen wild hogs caught in traps before, but I had never seen anything like that morning. The sound of steel wire pulled tight, the sound of dirt being torn up, that deep, heavy roar echoing through one corner of the woods. The hogs were thrashing hard, desperately trying to break out of the traps I had set earlier. The whole net system was shaking violently, and it all started because of one destroyed field. Last week, I went back to my hometown to visit my grandmother. As soon as I stepped into the yard, she didn't say much. She just quietly pointed toward the cornfield behind the house. I looked over. Half the field was ripped apart. Corn stalks were snapped flat, roots torn out, and the ground looked like it had been churned by a tiller. But nobody runs farm equipment out here at night. There was only one thing that could have done this. Wild hogs, and not just one or two. The neighbors said the hogs had been coming back for weeks. They tried fencing the field. They tried standing watch at night with torches. Some even took turns sleeping in the field shack. But these hogs weren't afraid of people anymore. They came in late. They tore through everything fast, and they vanished before sunrise. One of the older hunters in the village told me, "This sounder has a smart lead boar. He's the one guiding them. If we don't stop them now, this season's a total loss." That same morning, David, a few men from the village, and I decided we had to act immediately. This was going to be a large-scale operation, so we split into smaller teams. Following the hog tracks from the cornfield, we found the perfect location to set the traps. We had already brought in all the gear. This time, we decided to use net traps. Everyone took a job. One team drove heavy steel posts into the ground to lock down the trap positions. Another team unrolled thick coils of netting we had prepared ahead of time. Others stretched and tied the net. Every section had to be pulled tight and fastened carefully to the steel posts. It looked simple, but if even one part was off, the whole trap could fail. By the time the last net panel was up, the woods had gone completely silent. As soon as darkness settled in, the forest changed. The air felt heavy, like the whole place knew something was about to happen. We checked the traps through the cameras. One by one, the hogs started showing up, but I didn't expect that many. They moved slowly into the net trap, not sensing a thing. Then one hog suddenly noticed something was wrong and tried to bolt, and everything exploded into chaos. The net snapped tight like someone yanked it with full force. My heart started pounding. A big sounder had hit the net, more hogs than I could count at first. They thrashed hard, slamming into the mesh and making the whole section shake. And before I could even process that success, David yelled from the side. I turned to the screen. His net was buckling too. We hadn't even had time to say a word to each other when another loud crash echoed up from the valley below. I was pumped. It wasn't just one trap working. The whole trap system was going off, one after another. Net walls bulged in the dark. Everywhere, you could hear thrashing. Deep grunts. The sound of the woods coming alive. It was a strange feeling, part adrenaline, part excitement. We split up and ran to each trap point. Flashlights swept through the trees. Everywhere we looked, nets were shaking. Everywhere we looked, we had a catch. And I knew it. That night belonged to the net traps. After one long, tense night, we headed back to the trap sites at first light. Up close, that's when I really saw how big they were. Thick shoulders, scarred snouts, heavy muscle rolling under coarse hair. Looking at them, I felt two things at once: relief and a chill down my spine. These weren't just crop-raiding animals. They were survivors of the wild. And every one of them had to be handled humanely, following local rules and regulations, even after all the damage they had caused to the farmers here. On the way back, one of the hunters behind us suddenly stopped. He pointed at the ground near the edge of the trail. Another track, bigger, deeper. It meant the lead boar was still out there. I turned and looked back into the woods. If he was right, then this hunt had only just begun. Carefully into that darkness. Do you think it is just a bush? No, that is a 300-pound killing machine watching us. In Texas, wild hogs are no longer just animals. They are an invading army. We gave them a name, the Ghost Sounder. For the past 6 months, they have stayed invisible to every trap we set, destroying dozens of acres of cornfields before vanishing like spirits into the night. Tonight, the battle between human intelligence and the survival instincts of these beasts will finally be decided. You will not want to look away, because one wrong breath, one mistimed move, and the entire operation collapses. The biggest mistake amateur hunters make is impatience. With the Ghost Sounder, a steel trap is nothing more than a warning sign. So we used psychological warfare instead, feeding their complacency. For the last 5 days, we have scattered fermented corn, the most addictive scent imaginable, directly at the trap entrances without dropping the gates. At trap point number 1, the piglets are already inside. At point number 3, the lone boars are growling suspiciously. You can see it right now on the main screen. Live signals from multiple surveillance cameras streaming directly into my phone. The difficult part is not trapping the hogs. The difficult part is patience. We have to wait until the pigs at the farthest point move completely inside. If I hit the trigger too early at point number 2, the crash of steel and the alarm squeals will echo for miles, warning every remaining hog nearby. Right now, we are balancing everything on the edge of a single synchronized strike. Inside the truck cabin, the air feels heavy. Nobody is breathing. We are waiting for one final signal. 3 a.m. Everything is ready. Look at the screen. Point 1 ready. Point 2 ready. Point 4. The massive alpha boar has finally crossed the red line. Our fingers rest on the trigger buttons. This is the moment we have waited for. 3, 2, 1. Drop them. We got them. Look at this. It sounds like a steel earthquake. At trap number 2, 15 hogs are thrashing wildly, desperate to escape. At trap number 5, the giant boar is completely locked down. An unbelievable sight unfolds. Multiple traps crashing shut almost simultaneously, turning the Texas night into one enormous cage, trapping the invaders destroying these farms. We did not give them even a single second to react. The traps have fallen, but the real battle is only beginning. Deep in the darkness, we now have to secure the first 3 trap locations. There's no sunlight, only headlights and weak flashlight beams cutting through the night. We have been moving non-stop, racing against time to control the beasts raging inside the steel cages. The piercing screams of the hogs echo across the fields together with the violent rattling of chains. This work demands absolute concentration. One small mistake in the darkness could lead to disastrous consequences. 3 traps, dozens of targets, and not a single second to stop moving. When the first rays of sunlight break through the Texas fog, the second battlefield reveals itself. The remaining 3 traps are waiting under daylight. Now the true scale of the operation finally becomes visible. The giant hogs are no longer vague shadows in the dark. They are massive walls of muscle, living proof of the destruction they caused. Under the morning sun, we continue transporting them out. The exhaustion from a sleepless night seems to disappear the moment we see the results of the operation. 3 night traps, 3 daytime traps, a perfectly sealed encirclement.
The first night, nobody saw it as a real threat. Just a few faint noises along the edge of the garden. No heavy impact. No clear sign of a deliberate intrusion. By morning, a few crop rows were trampled, some plants pulled up by the roots. People looked at each other and shook their heads. Probably just a wild boar passing through. It'll be gone tomorrow. At that time, that assumption felt reasonable. But in hindsight, that was the first mistake, underestimating the risk. On the second night, the sounds came back. Not louder, not more aggressive, just familiar. By the third night, tracks covered the same path again and again. This was no coincidence anymore. A pattern had formed. So, what was done next? And did it work? Stay with us. Once the boars started hitting the edge of the land, people began taking turns staying up at night. Fires were lit, flashlights in hand, walking patrols around the fields, just to let the herd know, humans are here. But this kind of defense burns people out. Humans have to stay awake, eyes wide open, every single night. Wild boars don't. They can stand back, stay calm, skip a night, and simply wait for the moment when exhaustion creates an opening. And sooner or later, that night always comes. By the next morning, the damage was impossible to ignore. Fences pushed aside, crops destroyed across a wide area, tracks covering the entire field. The loss didn't grow gradually. It spiked, suddenly and violently, far beyond anything before. That's when the real problem became clear. It wasn't that the wild boars were getting bolder. They had just chosen the right moment. If this cycle continued, the damage wouldn't stop at a single harvest. After that night, everything changed. No more night watches, no more random chasing. Instead, a long-term decision was made. Stop reacting after the damage, and start controlling space and behavior. The enclosure trap wasn't built to confront the boars head-on. It was built to reshape their movement. Once behavior becomes predictable, space control becomes the key. Steel frames were connected into a closed enclosure, leaving only one narrow entrance. The trap wasn't placed in an open area or somewhere obvious. It was built directly on the herd's mandatory travel route, the path they had to take to reach their familiar food source. Every detail was calculated, hidden enough to avoid suspicion, strong enough to hold under pressure, and a mechanism that didn't rely on luck. Night fell, right on schedule. The same sounds came from the same direction. The herd appeared, just like every night before. No hesitation, no caution. After many quiet nights, they had learned this place carried no real risk. That familiarity made them predictable. When the entire herd was within the controlled zone, when there was no clean escape left, the system was triggered. No loud noise, no chasing, no chaos. And most importantly, from that night on, this area disappeared from the herd's return map. One decision, made at the right time, cut off a cycle that had lasted night after night. After that night, the land went quiet again. No fresh tracks, no repeated destruction. Not because wild boars vanished completely, but because the balance had been restored. When space and behavior are controlled, conflict doesn't escalate. In conflicts between humans and wildlife, sustainable solutions don't come from instant reactions. They come from breaking the cycle, or damage becomes irreversible. You might not realize this, but in wild boar control, the greatest danger doesn't lie in the moment the system is triggered. It lies in what comes after. Invisible traces don't vanish right away. Scent, sound, disturbed behavior patterns. To the rest of the herd, those traces are information. They're clues to answer one question only. Is this place still safe? If handled carelessly, a single intervention point can quietly turn into a familiar checkpoint, one the herd remembers and returns to, raising the risk instead of reducing it. That's why the true goal of the entire system isn't how many animals are caught, but whether the behavioral loop of the herd is fully broken. At the forest edge, the smart enclosure records the first response. A few individuals are held back, while the rest of the herd stays at a distance, watching, not fully retreating. That tells us one thing clearly. This area hasn't been erased from their movement map yet. Instead of waiting longer to draw more in, the control team moves early. The first captured animals are transported out immediately, preventing the site from turning into a confirmation point for the herd behind. Once the vehicle leaves, the forest edge settles back into normal. No signals remain. Nothing left to assess. No reason for the herd to return. In the buffer zone, the system never fully activates. The boars approach, leave traces, then pull away. In many cases, this would be labeled a failed operation. But this time, the response is different. The area isn't left overnight. Biological traces are removed. The space is reset to what we call an information empty zone. At the same time, the transport route from the forest edge is quietly adjusted to pass through this area without leaving new signals behind. When the herd comes back to check, they find nothing familiar, no confirmation. The buffer zone loses its role entirely. It's no longer a link in the herd's movement chain. Near residential areas, the large enclosure system is fully deployed. This is the most sensitive zone, where every action must put community safety first. The rules here are strict. No prolonged handling on site, no gathering points, no curiosity, no uncontrolled contact. The goal isn't just to resolve the immediate situation, but to make sure this place never becomes an attraction point again. In a short time, a high-risk zone is converted back into a safe space for local residents. All captured individuals are transported to the designated handling locations according to regulations. This ensures they don't return to their old territory, don't create location memory for other herds, and don't introduce secondary risks to nearby communities. Throughout the process, transport isn't just a technical step. It's the final lock that seals the entire control system. Once movement is cut off, the chain of risk ends right there. A trap can control individuals, but only proper handling and correct direction can maintain long-term stability. In wild boar management, success isn't measured by how many are caught, but by whether dangerous behavior is prevented from happening again. When the herd signal chain is broken, the risk chain to crops and communities is broken with it. Quietly, responsibly, without extremes. And the greatest success of all, when the community no longer has to think about wild boars at all. Follow us and continue the journey with us. Dramatic, real, and rooted in the mission of protecting our homeland from wild boar threats.
This time, we moved into an entirely new area in Arizona, a place where the dry terrain, dense low brush, and rocky crevices made both movement and trap placement far more difficult than before. Fresh wild hog tracks still appeared clearly across the hardened ground, proving that the animals had adapted quickly to the harsh environment here. But the question was whether the traps that had worked so effectively in Texas would still perform under completely different conditions. Or this time, would we need to change our strategy once again just to keep up with them? The first trap was installed early in the morning at a location filled with clear movement trails. With Arizona's dry terrain, I expected it would take quite some time before the wild hogs returned. But everything happened much faster than expected. Only a short while later, the activation signal appeared. There was no time to wait, and we immediately moved toward the trap location. Even from a distance, the movement inside showed that the result was far from small. As we got closer, the entire group of wild hogs had already been trapped inside. Without hesitation, we quickly secured the situation and handled everything before the animals could create any danger. The second trap was placed deep in the forest during daylight, in an area covered with signs showing that wild hogs frequently pass through. Everything was completed fairly early, but this time we did not receive an immediate signal like we had with the previous trap. It was not until late at night that the trap was finally triggered. Because of the difficult terrain and poor visibility, I decided not to take unnecessary risks by approaching during the night, and instead waited until the following morning. When we returned to inspect it, the result was obvious. The trap had successfully held several wild hogs after many hours inside the bush. And as usual, we quickly secured the situation and began collecting everything before moving on to the next location. The final trap was left overnight in a hidden section of the forest. Through the monitoring cameras, we confirmed that the trap had been triggered during the previous night when the wild hogs returned along their familiar movement route. The next morning, without hesitation, we headed directly toward the final trap location. The moment we arrived, everything became clear. The wild hogs were still trapped inside after spending hours confined within the enclosure. Without wasting time, we quickly brought the situation under control and handled everything, bringing the final trapping operation in this area to a close. When the final trap had been checked, our entire operation in Arizona also came to an end. Despite the harsher terrain and greater challenges compared to previous locations, the trap placements this time still proved highly effective. Every trap, every activation showed that wild hogs still move according to their own patterns, and as long as the right location is found, they can still make mistakes. But that is also why none of this is ever truly finished. Because out there, deep within the dry forests of Arizona, there are still fresh tracks waiting to be discovered, and sooner or later, we will definitely return.
Not every appearance of wild boar is a problem, but when fresh tracks overlap old ones, when the same routes repeat night after night, that's when territory is being taken, quietly, without a single confrontation. For the people living here, danger doesn't arrive overnight. It builds step by step until the distance between wildlife and daily life is gone. So the solution chosen isn't confrontation, it's the creation of a control system designed to reduce conflict and protect human living space. Let's take a closer look at how that system works. The Boar Buster system is installed after days of field scouting. Placement, approach angles, and timing are all calculated based on the herd's movement habits. As night falls, infrared cameras pick up the first movements from the forest edge. The boars don't rush the bait. They stop, watch, test the ground, study the frame. This is typical behavior of animals shaped by constant survival pressure. The system activates exactly as planned, but the drop happens just a fraction of a second too late. That tiny delay is enough. The most alert individuals sense the danger. Within seconds, the entire herd pulls back cleanly, leaving nothing behind but an empty trap. This isn't a failure of equipment, it's a mismatch between mechanical timing and the razor-fast instincts of wild animals. By daylight, the system is fully inspected. No mechanical damage, no warped frame, no trigger malfunction. The problem lies in deployment. The hanging height isn't optimal, the sensor angle is slightly off, and most critically, the response delay is slower than a wild boar's natural reflex. Wild boar live in a world where survival is measured in seconds. They are smart, adaptive, and they never fall for the same mistake twice. Once danger is recognized, the behavior of the entire herd changes immediately. If the same setup is kept, the risk isn't repeated failure, it's escalation as the herd becomes more cautious and harder to manage. Sometimes, the smartest move is to stop before things get worse. Instead of pushing forward, all activity is paused. This isn't hesitation, it's restraint, meant to avoid further imprinting stress or warning signals onto the herd. The system is rebuilt from scratch and tested through continuous demo runs. Every detail is measured: drop speed, approach angles, natural movement lines. The goal isn't the fastest reaction, it's the right one. Consistent, predictable, reducing stress on both the animals and the surrounding environment. Once all parameters reach optimal levels, the system is redeployed at known entry points into farmland. That night, the herd appears exactly along its usual route. This time, the control process completes cleanly. The trigger responds fast and accurately. No panic, no uncontrolled collisions, no spillover risk. More importantly than what happens that night is what happens afterward. The herd's familiar movement route is cut off, and just like that, peace is restored, allowing local farmers to return safely to their fields.
Let's get 'em.
If the first intervention had gone perfectly, the most important lesson might have been missed. Wildlife control isn't for rushing, and it certainly isn't about blind faith in equipment. It demands observation, analysis, and constant adjustment. That moment of failure is what ultimately saved the entire harvest. Not through luck, but through clear judgment and responsibility in knowing when to act and when to stop.
Go on in. One, two.